2 years ago, before the work, this was a barren wasteland. Nothing had been grown here for 40 years. When the UN World Food Program told the villagers that they were going to bring this land back as part of the Great Green Wall, they said it was impossible. But here we are in Africa, in the desert at the northern edge of Senegal, and life has returned. And the stakes couldn't be higher, because when the soil washes away and land becomes a desert, then people leave. They head to the cities, and places like this just fall apart. But thanks to the work of the villagers and the World Food Program, using techniques and systems that I'm going to tell you about in this video, the tides have changed, and natural wealth is growing back and growing the livelihoods of the people here. Welcome to Senegal. I'm here during the rainy season to see the work of the Great Green Wall of Africa. My wife and I, we started in Dakar, a city of about 4 million people. It's the biggest city in Senegal. It is the westernmost point of the entire continent of Africa. I met with the World Food Program there in Dakar to discuss our trip. So then we drove with the World Food Program. It was about a 7-hour drive through the Sahel. The ecosystem really changed a lot. In the southern part, the trees were larger, dispersed amongst the millet fields. As we drove north, the trees became smaller and smaller. This is late in the rainy season. This land is as green as it gets right now for the whole year. I've never seen this many grazing animals. The entire Sahel is like one big free-range pasture. So we drove up to the point where it transitions to the Sahara Desert, which is the Senegal River. We are here at the Senegal River, which is the border between Senegal on this side, Mauritania on the other. When you look from space, you can actually see the lateral sand dunes of Mauritania where they hit the Senegal River. The Senegal River is really the divide between the Sahara and the Sahel in many parts of the river. So the Senegal River here, it serves not only as the border between Senegal and Mauritania, and not only as the border between the Sahel and the Sahara, but if this river zone is vegetated, it could represent the first line of defense of the Great Green Wall of Africa. The Great Green Wall of Africa is a vision, the project to plant a barrier of trees across the entire width of the continent of Africa, from Senegal to Djibouti. And the purpose of this Great Green Wall is to stop the southern expansion of the Sahara Desert. The Sahara Desert has expanded about 10% in the last 100 years. So we have the Sahara Desert, then we have the Sahel, then we have the savanna, and then we have the rainforest. The design is to actually have a barrier of trees to stop the expansion of the desert southward. So I'm here on the ground at the Great Green Wall to show how we can restore degraded landscapes, we can keep the Sahara at bay, create abundance, have people living here and thriving.
We are here at WFP project site. We are in a very degraded land area. In the early beginning, when we presented the process and the idea, the community didn't believe. They said, no, this is not true. This is not feasible. We cannot recover this land. More than 40 years, we are here. Nothing is growing on this side. The process started with the community-based participatory planning. By the end of this process, it was agreed that one of the major action is the land reclamation or land recovery project. This is a sort of school. They come to learn how to improve land. The people believe and they are convinced and they are also committed. You can see.
At WFP, we have planted and rehabilitated some 300,000 hectares of land over the past years. And what you see here is 30 hectares out of those 300,000. This is a contribution to the Great Green Wall because the Great Green Wall is like a patchwork a mosaic of forests that together create this wall that will protect the Sahel from being encroached by the Sahara Desert. We're working on degraded land and bringing it back to life. And that takes a few stages. When we start with a soil like this one that we see right here, okay, that is crusted, that is sun-baked, that cannot support any kind of life because it is literally hard as cement. There's no way seeds or any plants can actually take root here. We bring it back to life and we bring it back to production so that it can feed people and it can feed the communities and communities can start thriving again. We need to create water harvesting structures that maintain the water on site. If we look at the soil the way it is right now, the water cannot stay here, so it rains and it flows away. So these half moons, they are the first step in this rehabilitation process, in this soil build-up process. On this site here, we have 7,500 half moons, each of which has a 4-meter diameter. This takes one person to dig 1 half moon per day. This site has been dug by a team of 150 people. So how does the half moon work? The rain basically comes here and we have put the half moons on contour lines, which means the rain, when it falls to the ground, it flows into this area here, which is a little bit lower so that it retains the water. And we create this embankment, okay, that's a little bit higher up and make sure that the water doesn't overflow, okay, and it stays here and it feeds these plants. So we are mainly using local species like the sorghum and the millet that actually has been domesticated here many thousands of years ago. So it actually comes from the Sahel and produce a maximum quantity of biomass as well. So they are perfect to rehabilitate the land while feeding the people at the same time. This is nothing new. We have not invented a technology here. The half moon technology is actually an endogenous technology to the Sahel and has been forgotten over time. We have rescued it from the past. So the sorghum that you can see behind us actually grew only with rainwater. Around 10 to 15% of water that will be caught here will enter the ground and will recharge the groundwater tables. That way we actually achieve a balance of water. So we are not depleting the water resources, but we're making sure that we keep enough water in the ground for future generations. Then we have another system that mainly consists of planting lines. We have horticulture beds where we can plant tomatoes, okra, and so on. Here we have trenches where we have planted moringa, we have planted pigeon pea, and we have planted also some okra that has grown wildly here. And the idea here is that we have biomass trenches that will provide biomass as the system grows. In between these trenches, we have planting pits where we have planted fruit trees. We have guava, citrus. This is just a very first step in this pilot. We'll also be using other native species that we'll be planting in the pits that will drive the rejuvenation of the soil and the protection of the soil as the system starts growing into abundance and producing food and life for the people here. In its mature state, this system will look like a forest, okay, forest lines that will be producing biomass and fruit, and we'll have other lines in between where we'll be producing horticulture, vegetables. This is exactly the way nature works. We came across syntropic farming, which is a type of conservation agriculture that has been developed in Brazil based on global indigenous knowledge. In the whole world, many indigenous populations have a similar way traditionally to do agriculture that is different from conventional agriculture and which mimics forest dynamics. In the next step, we'll be growing trees here. So if we look at the vastness of this area here, we can plant 10,000s of trees into these structures.
Sometimes you come in the villages, you don't see nobody. You can just see some animals to say, okay, I think people are here. Usually, every year after the rainy season, most of the young people migrate to Dakar and other big towns in Senegal. This is the internal or the local migration. Some leave Senegal to go to Spain. What they are going to do there? Agriculture, that they leave behind. They go to harvest apple there, while they leave the same activity here. Before, they were thinking about how to migrate. But they told me now they don't think about that. With this borehole we put in place, now we are going to work 12 months on vegetable production. Now these young boys who are very key for the village security, for the village development, now don't need to go to live just the old people in the village. Now they will contribute to the local dynamic of the community. Now they are together, they have social cohesion.
Now, this project was really interesting because the World Food Program wanted to demonstrate how you could take the most devastated areas and turn them back into resilient food-producing locations. And they specifically placed their project on a very degraded landscape that had been taken down to bare, compacted earth. This is actually the front line of the Great Green Wall of Africa. The Senegal River, at least for this region, that's where you're gonna have your real true dividing line between the Sahara and the Sahel. So the work of the WFP is solving this problem directly here on the ground with the Great Green Wall of Africa.